It's easy to hear your favorite artist on WFPK from wherever you are. Listen on your smart speaker, live stream from our website at WFPK.org from Louisville Public Media.
Did you survive the Thanksgiving carry-on?
Consequence Podcast Network. Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org. Consequence and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making your way here. Thanks for checking out the series. Please do hit that subscribe button. That way you can keep up with all the interviews that I put out every single week. New one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That's 3 interviews every single week to keep you up to date on your favorite artists and discover some new ones as well at all the usual places: iTunes, Apple Podcast, at Spotify and Podchaser, NPR, WFPK.org, YouTube for the video versions, or anywhere you get your podcasts from. Subscribe to Kyle Meredith with. That's me, I'm Kyle Meredith. And as far as discovering new artists go, this is not that. This is one of my all-time favorite artists. Someone I've probably had on this series more than any other artist, and I hope that streak actually continues. I'm talking about the one, the only Shirley Manson of Garbage. Today, we're going to be talking about really a lot of things. It's kind of a year-end wrap-up. Most recently, Garbage just released Anthology. It's a new compilation that traces their entire catalog from the beginnings all the way through last year's No Gods, No Masters. We're going to be talking about how their record label talked them into the compilation and the struggle of it not actually being released in the U.S. It's everywhere else, but you got to kind of get it imported here. We'll hear about how their 2016 album, Strange Little Birds, went mostly overlooked. It's probably my favorite Garbage album these days. And as she says, being erased from musical history after the critical slagging of the James Bond theme. Their James Bond theme, The World Is Not Enough, back in 1999. Although it's had a really honest reappraisal since, and now is looked at as one of the great Bond theme songs. So with that, we'll also talk about, the wonkiness of just being in a band for decades long, and how you go through the peaks and valleys with attention, I guess is how you put that. Shirley's also going to get into the financial risk of touring in a post-pandemic world, and we'll get a tiny little peek on the news on their next album, which she says they're currently working on. So let's dig into this and discuss Anthology. It's Kyle Meredith with Shirley Manson of Garbage.
Hello. How are you?
Yeah, I kind of want to do a little bit of a year-end review because so much has happened this year, I think, with you and Garbage, and since the last time we talked, which I feel like is more often than anyone else that I talk to. No complaints here. But let's sort of, I guess, start the most recent work backwards, because there's a new collection called Anthology that's come out, and it's fair not to, like, you didn't call this the greatest hits. Like, it looks like you purposely chose the word anthology. I guess, the easy way to get into this is where did this idea come from, and how did you want it to represent the band?
Well, it was really our record company, BMG, in the UK, who wanted to put out in inverted commas, greatest hits. And we felt like we had kind of touched on that in 2005 with Absolute Garbage. We didn't really see much point in sort of doing so. But then when we actually sort of thought about it, we were like, well, since 2005, we've been going for another 17 years, like a long bloody time, 17 years since our last greatest hits. And I think that kind of shocked us. And there's a lot of songs that we have released since then that we're very proud of and we really love. And so we realized that if we put another collection out, it could be, representative of our career thus far. And we thought it would be a beautiful piece for the fans and, of course, for ourselves, because it's great to have so many of our songs under one umbrella, so to speak. So that really was we just got talked into it, basically. And then we had an idea for the artwork. We worked with this amazing artist from Chile, and Javi de Amor, and she presented us with this incredible cover, and then we were really excited, and it's just been kind of a real labor of love.
Yeah, that cover is so striking. I've only seen it digitally. Of course, I'm here in the States, so it's not. I need to get the imports of the album. to bring it over here.
I'm sure we could maybe make that happen for you.
But that's kind of been probably unintentionally a little bit part of the story behind this too, right? Is like is that it is released everywhere else, but here in the States.
Yeah.
Is there a story there? And I don't know, is that frustrating? It feels like it would be frustrating.
Oh yeah, it's so frustrating and so disappointing, and you know, to be told that you can't release your own songs, you know, in North America due to reluctance or apathy on a record company's part is devastating. You know, I mean, artists. I know artists currently are really up against it anyway, and we've all been moaning for a long time about how we get really manhandled by the music industry, and this is just another example of the sort of overreach of record labels. You know, they get to do what they will with you, and there's not much you can do about it. So luckily for us, we have a different record label in Europe than we do in North America, so we were able to put this collection together anyway. But very disappointed that we couldn't release it in the form that we wanted to over here in the States. It was sort of frustrating isn't even the right word for it. You know, I wanted to go on a murder spree, but you know, I'm kind of over it now. But
yeah, I'll have you know that I emailed and I think even texted my BMG folks, the people that work the radio stations, and was like, what the hell? Witness to Your Love is such a great song. No one's heard it. We're going to play it. Why aren't you guys pushing this? I got no reply on that stuff. And that was even frustrating for me. You know, as a fan, it's like, that's bonkers. It's bonkers. It really is.
Yeah, it is bonkers. And just, you know, again, that, you know, they just, you know, if any other business was run the way the music industry was run, it would be in the toilet. You know, because they have these investments. They make investments in artists, and then they don't do anything with them. They just lie on them, you know, and let them rot. And luckily for us, we're really tenacious and we have a lot of experience and we know how to circumvent the system a lot of the time. And so we've managed to sustain a career over the course of nearly 30 years, you know, 3 decades. That in itself is a monumental achievement, you know, of which we are mighty proud. And this anthology sort of is testament to that, like just collective will of ours, which is really terrifying sometimes.
And we'll be right back right after this. Welcome back. Talking with Shirley Manson of Garbage. And I don't want to get too deep in the woods here, but I mean, for me, it's kind of a fascinating conversation. You know, I operate in this world as well in a different part of it, but just, you know, for a band, as you said, that's been around 30 years, that's sort of, you've done major labels and, you know, I don't know if you've done independent releases, and BMG sort of, to me, is sort of operates in this weird other world, because I don't really think of it as in the same way as like Atlantic Records or Interscope or something like that, you know, but you know, I don't know exactly what I'm getting to here either, but, you know, for a band that's been around, like, what are you looking for in that kind of partnership these days? And do you feel like outside of maybe this situation that you found it?
Well, first of all, it's not just BMG who are at fault here. It's Universal Records that own a lot of the rights. So I don't want to besmirch BMG USA entirely, because it was a financial decision on their part. I have more a grievance with Universal, but listen, we have released records in all different forms. We've been on indie labels, we've been on major labels, we've had our own independent label. We realized, you know, as time wore on, that you cannot compete with the distribution power of major labels, unless you happen to be a zeitgeist, you know, in that moment you might be able to like compete, but it's highly unlikely that a band that's been around and is, you know, kind of thought of as an old shoe, an old slipper, it can compete. You know, certainly when we ran our own independent label entirely, we just were getting drowned out, and we realized very quickly, you know, this is a bit of a disaster actually for us. So for a band at our stage of our career, it wasn't a really very easy sort of situation for us. So, you know, you make decisions based on practicalities, then you like, again, we're old, long enough in the tooth to realize we have to make concessions. That's what we did. We signed with BMG, and knowing that it wouldn't always be plain sailing. Nothing is, though. I mean, there's no such thing as a perfect situation. So you make do and hope that someone somewhere on your label will give a shit.
And to be fair, and honestly, and I have friends over there too. We were worked very well on your most recent album. So it's just, I turned around, like, again, I'm a greedy fan is where I'm coming from this, that like, why aren't you just working everything possible?
Yeah, it really is frustrating. They would just rather work a new band, a new artist, than work an old band like us. And I get that, but I think it's very short-sighted, and I think a lot of the time our record labels have been kind of caught off guard by how much interest that somehow we still manage to garner, and they're always sort of caught chasing the ball. Although BMG UK have been great with us. I mean, we've had a very successful partnership with them thus far. So, like I said, we got lucky. We landed on BMG UK and somebody gave a shit. And that makes all the difference, in the world.
It just means that we need to start this huge campaign to get you guys in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame now, because that seems to be like when they start paying attention again, when those type of things start happening. Like, you know what? They're big enough, they're great enough, they deserve it.
I mean, there's 1,000,000,001 artists I can think of who deserve to be in there, and I think we've stopped concerning ourselves with those kind of, benchmarks. We've been overlooked by the Grammys. We've been overlooked by the MTV Awards. I mean, there's a VH1 more awards. There's 1,000,000,001 awards. There's 1,000,000,001 accolades. And I think what we are concerned with is a lot, the longevity of a career,
Sure.
and having a sense of integrity in that career. And I think we've managed to do that. And I think that's really quite rare. And therefore, to us, that's probably more rewarding in the long run. There's a lot of people who've won all kinds of awards and their careers have lasted 5 minutes, 2 years.
Yeah.
And so we'll take what we've got. We're really lucky. And although I complain all the time, I am well aware how lucky we are and how privileged we are, and I really am grateful at this point in my life.
Well, as you're saying, and I'll tie it back around to Anthology too, because it's a great collection, and you get that because even the lesser known songs shine just as bright, and maybe that was to me that's one of the strong points of this collection too, is it does get to put a spotlight, like. I'm just looking at the track list, like You Look So Fine, Tell Me Where It Hurts, Sex Is Not the Enemy. Like, these are songs, these are like, these are not songs that I hear on the radio, unless it's me spinning it on my radio station. But and they do stand, neck and neck with those other ones too. And again, that's not a question. That's just a compliment about just how strong a collection this is when you can have the lesser known songs still right there up against the others.
Well, thank you. That's such a lovely thing to say. And I have to say, we've been quite bowled over by the response the anthology has gotten. A lot of the time you put records out, you get a lot of kickback, no matter what, and even from the fans, but the fans have just been delighted with this collection. And we've been really moved, actually, by the love that it's received. And it means a lot to us, because with every song, every album that we have put out, we've really tried to make sure that we're not like cutting corners, and we're not sort of just winging it. We've tried really hard our whole career to make sure each song is loved and cherished and nurtured and sort of carved out, and we're proud of all of them. We haven't put out a shitty record ever.
Well, I'll say my only complaints.
Easy, Kyle, easy.
If I Lost You, that'd be the one I would have put on there too. That's one of my all-time favorites. We're all gonna have that one.
It's one of my all-time favorites as well. I love it so much.
Like I said, we're all gonna have those songs, and I was like, oh, that's it. That's the one. That's the one. Like, as the more time passes, like when Strange Little Birds came out, I really did instantly love it. And but the more time passed, it's really started to become like my go-to first in line garbage album. That one right there. And
I love that.
yeah.
I mean, it was funny because, careers are just a funny thing, yeah. And, you put out records and they get ignored in some parts of the world. And then in other parts of the world, they shine, and we were so delighted that when we released Strange Little Birds, it kind of got ignored in certain areas. But in Germany, they were sort of hailing it as a masterpiece. And that goes a long way to sort of bolster your sort of sense of, well, we're not insane. Like, yes, the rest of the world has completely dismissed this record, but somewhere someone has seen it for how we view it, and it's so lovely and thrilling. I mean, I love that record. It's very, very dark record, but I think it's really powerful.
I mean, when Empty comes on, especially on FPK, when it comes on, when the drums hit right there, I can't not air drum to that song, and I'm not a drummer. It's just one of those songs, and it's beyond me.
Well, there's a lot of good songs on there. I forget. I forget sometimes, but yeah, I'm proud of it.
Yeah. I should ask while we're here about Witness to Your Love, because that's the one we've been playing so much lately. It's not the new one, but for a lot of us it is a new. Like, even as big of a fan as I am, I didn't know that song. It was in that mid 2000s mark that it just kind of slipped by me. You guys weren't on the hiatus, I guess, but we weren't really paying attention. It ends up on a compilation. How did that song sort of get lost and then find its way back?
Well, it got lost because we were at a point in our career where we just couldn't get arrested and we couldn't do anything right. I mean, it really was sort of, it got to the point where it was almost laughable. Like, we just, it was almost like we'd become persona non grata. Like, we were erased from musical history. There'd be like all these magazines would put like lists of the best records of the 90s, and we'd be nowhere on there, even though we were up for, album of the year with version 2.0, and our debut was like a huge, sensation, basically, in alternative rock. And so, yeah, we realized, we're just this kind of forgotten about entity. And we were sort of operating under that understanding that nobody really was paying attention. And so we gave this fantastic song that we gave it away to a free compilation for, I think it was given away with Urban Outfitters for free on a compilation of some sort. And and that's how it just sort of disappeared. Nobody knew it'd ever come out. We always had it in the back of our minds of what a great song it was, because we played it, I think, at the time for Q Prime Management, who represented us at the time, and they were like freaking out. Like, they were like, "This is amazing! Write another 12 of these, and you've got an album." But by then the shit hit the fan, and everything went bottoms up, and so yeah, we were still on hiatus, and everything was weird, and so anyway, it's a jewel of a song, and we're really proud of it, and it was lovely to be able to include it in this anthology.
And we'll be right back right after this. Welcome back. Talking with Shirley Manson of Garbage. And it's interesting, the way you were talking about that too, because earlier you said, it's a career is interesting, in the way, because that would have been around. There's the thing, right? Fan fatigue or band fatigue, whatever you want to say. And it's usually about 10 years. And you get about 10 years, and then people need you to go away for whatever that is.
Yes. Yes.
Unless you're just one of the rare occurrences, where like,
yeah.
But even then, like, when I look at, I don't know, because the Beatles didn't make it 10 years, or really, and then U2, but it sort of fell apart for them for a moment, and they were able to kind of pick it back up. But you have those rare, but otherwise, that's like, again, and I don't know if I'm projecting here, but that's one of those really interesting, when you've got longevity and you can look back at that and you see that, like, how do you get past those moments? Because I guess to a certain degree, it's completely out of your hands.
Yeah, it's absolutely out of your hands at that point. Although I would argue, for anyone out there who's feeling like they're in a bit of a pit, in any career, in any point in their lives, there's a moment when you feel like you're over and done with. And I would just argue that these are feelings. They're not facts. You feel over. because you're not kind of getting the response or the promotion you want, or there's a billion one reasons why we get downhearted. But I think it's just important to keep doing the work, keep doing what you love, keep doing what you're good at. And sooner or later, it's like putting a penny in the bank, or using, putting a brick in a wall. Like sooner or later, you build the wall, then you've got a house, you've got a piggy bank full of pennies. It's just, if you can focus on work and focus on love of what you do, I think that is ultimately what will save you. You might not get the result you were expecting, but you'll get a positive result, I think, for the most part, unless you're unbelievably unlucky, which, of course, as we know, there's always that poor soul that just can't catch a break.
And if you stick around long enough, it always comes back around. And
that's what they say.
But I say that in the way, like you're mentioning how people weren't including you in the list, and now these days, like you are, automatically top of mind, I think, for a lot of those. Well, that's true. We're talking about the greatest albums of the 90s. You got two of them right there, and it's even like I've heard you talk about like the Bond theme. I think it's a good example of that, because I did not have a clue that you all didn't have a good run critically with that song, because I've always loved it. But now the way people talk about it, like that's an essential Bond song.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe what the sort of cycle of that song. It has been extraordinary, because of course we were really excited when we got to do a Bond theme. It was a big honor for us. But I think the music industry saw us as an alternative band, and us accepting the mantle of a Bond theme, they saw as us selling out, in inverted commas, that ludicrous phrase that gets bandied around a lot whenever the forces that be try and keep alternative artists in their place. I think they punished us royally for it. We sort of just became uncool. That was the end of it. It was just like, oh, that's garbage. They're sellouts. And having had this incredible run at radio all over the world, nobody would play us, and we couldn't. We really could barely get our career back up on the go immediately after the Bond theme. And then it got slagged off in the press really badly. I mean, really horrible reviews, like really nasty stuff. And then we were devastated, but then we watched all the subsequent artists that followed in our footsteps. They too were savaged. And then we started to realize, oh, it's a pattern. It's not personal. It's just what happens. People have these insane expectations of artists when they cover Bond themes, and they have a lot of their emotions are invested in the Bond franchise for one reason or other. And time just ticked on, and before you know it, 20 years passed, and then all of a sudden people felt affectionate towards us again, and started playing the song again, and everybody started to love on it. So we just performed it actually at the Royal Albert Hall a month ago with the London Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, which was like one of the most spectacular things to ever happen to me. I couldn't believe it. I just could not believe I was getting to sing with an orchestra, and the band were like so psyched, and just it was magical.
Yeah. What was the preparation for that night like?
Well, we didn't really, I'm going to be really honest with you, we didn't do any preparation, because we just finished tour, and our darling bass player, who we've played with forever, has gone back to his original band, Jane's Addiction. So we found ourselves without a bass player. So we were like, holy shit, what are we going to do? We're not going to turn down this opportunity to go to London and play in the Royal Albert Hall. So we called up our very, very old original bass player, Daniel Schulman, who is now an incredible therapist and like really serious, beautiful person. And we were like, do you want to come to London, and play this show? And he's like, yeah, okay. And I think we had one rehearsal, and he was spectacular. So we managed to pull it off, but there wasn't really that much preparation. Luckily, we'd been playing it on tour this summer when we opened for Tears for Fears. So something in the back of my mind must have known I needed to scrub up on that song. So it was ready to go, really.
So the Tears for Fears show, and I'm gonna have to make I'm gonna have to come out on something right here. You came back to Cincinnati, and you're on stage, and one of my dreams comes through when my name is mentioned and a song is dedicated to me.
That's right, because you deserved it.
Well, thank you. I don't know if that's true, but it certainly made all my nerd dreams come true. That's I had messaged you, and because me and my wife were going, and what you didn't know was that about 2 hours before that show, my wife got really sick, and so she couldn't go, and I wasn't going to be an asshole and just leave her here.
No, of course not.
And so I didn't make it to the show. I wasn't there. And I was
amazing.
I was so embarrassed to even tell you that, because I wasn't, it's not like I was going to message you like, oh, by the way, we're not coming now. It's like there was no use in it. You were doing a show, whatever. But
yeah.
But I started getting all of these texts, like, we're just sitting around, and she's feeling horrible, and she's feeling bad that that we're not there, but we had also just seen you like months before that with Alanis in the same venue, so it wasn't like it's fine, we'll see them next time, not knowing that this was going to happen.
Oh, that's hilarious. I have to say, I quite like that story.
But seriously, that's like, I don't know. What's the dream? Like, if you're not a musician, to have someone either write a song about you or at least dedicate a song from the stage, and so you just made my year. That's it right there.
Well,
so thank you.
I mean, I've got to be honest with you. You've supported us for such a long time, and I'm such a mental case that I always pay attention to people that really support us and step out for us, and so it was a sincere dedication. But don't expect it every time I come to Cincinnati.
Sorry, but if you ever come to Louisville, that's when I'll expect it. That's
yeah, there you go.
Come down here. That was seriously amazing, and the touring, I think, probably is its own set of questions here, at least because you put out the record and you were doing the tour with Alanis, and then transitioned into the tour with Tears for Fears, and then there was only a small run, which ended up being even smaller, of the headlining shows. I'm sure this gets into what it's like to be a touring band in the 2020s, which like,
yeah.
What was the choice to be the opener on two really huge tours? I mean, opening for amazing artists, and instead of doing a longer headlining run.
Well, I'm going to be brutally frank, as I always am. It was our manager, Paul Kremen, who said, it's really risky for you all to go out and play on your own headline show, and here's why. And he explained to us, what the situation was with escalating costs, with no ability to insure yourself against COVID, and COVID was the absolute reality we were all facing. Like, it was highly unlikely that we could go out on the road and somebody not get sick, we wouldn't be covered for it. So it was a nightmare. And he suggested, that we accept this incredible invite from Alanis Morissette to open for her. Now, having opened for Alanis several times over the years, we were delighted to join her on that tour, because it's absolutely saved our bacon. Like, she absolutely reached out at the perfect time and saved us, because we had been at this point on our backsides for almost 2 years as a result of COVID. So she took us out last summer. It was an absolute joy. She sold out everywhere. I mean, it was mental, and it was a real Cat Power was also opening the show, so it was a very, very special lineup. I thought really powerful. 3 women who have endured a music industry that is very unkind to women over the age of 25. So I was proud to be on that bill. And then, God bless Tears for Fears, they also invited us out again. And then once again, Paul Kremen, our manager, was like, I think you'd be wise to go back out, in an opening slot. And we did what we were told, because he had protected us, from the absolute chaos that has continued to, just get more and more crazy over the last, year. And the costs of touring now are 3 times as much as they were a year ago. And it's impossible to get a tour bus, because everybody's out and everybody's vying for the same venues. It's impossible to even book a show half the time. So yeah, it's insane. And then, of course, if you get sick, which my band did, I didn't. I was the only band member not to go down.
Wow.
But everybody else went down all at once. And we'd played 1 week of our own shows. And we played, I think, 2 shows, and then everybody got sick. And so we had to blow out, I think it was 4 shows we had to blow out. And it cost us an arm and a leg because, of course, we've got crew out and we're about to rejoin Alanis. So we can't go home. So we're just sitting in a hotel room with a group of very sad men feeling very sorry for themselves, rightly so. And we just bled money. And it was frightening. And that's what every band out there right now is going through, except they're not all as lucky as we were or are. They don't necessarily have opening gigs with some of the biggest artists in the world to offset, the loss of a COVID situation. It's dark. I feel so sad for all the young ones. We'll be fine. No matter what. We're like cockroaches, but all these young artists that are holding down, 2 to 3 jobs, taking time off to go and do a 2-week tour, and they get absolutely sideswiped, and it's really sad.
Even like Lorde, you've got a superstar status right there, saying that if she goes on tour, she's going to be lucky to break even. Like that's spelled, like if that level right there is having trouble,
Yeah, everybody's having trouble. But Lorde's, I don't feel too sad for Lorde. She's going to be fine too.
Sure.
I'm thinking about all the musicians that haven't even got that far. That is a real heartbreak. It's absolutely awful. And I think we're going to see a whole generation of young musicians sort of capsized by this. And I don't know if every one of them will be able to, survive the losses and the heartache and the disappointment that has come with this terrible virus,
And we'll be right back right after this. Welcome back. Talking with Shirley Manson of Garbage. Because touring is still so important. Like you have like some artists who have fan bases already that are able to, whether it's still the weekly at home concerts over Zoom or whatever, like talking with Stephen Page, Bare Naked Lady Stephen Page, he's been doing that and he can do that. He has a fan base. Or Maynard from Tool, he's got Pussifer, and all they do is like release like live concert that they shoot at their home, like on a grand stage, and they have subscribers. But as you're saying, like I agree, when you have an artist who's trying to find their people, and it's venue to venue is the best way to do that, and when that's taken away, what does that mean? I don't know what that means.
Well, as I said, we're going to see the complete annihilation of a whole generation of young musicians, and I think what we're seeing is the toll that streaming music has taken on musicians and on the industry. It's proven itself to be an unsustainable situation because artists can't be expected solely to bolster themselves through the live experience. The recorded music is worth something, but it's being treated as though it's completely valueless, and it's an outrage, to be honest. The equivalent of, like, people say to me all the time, oh, this happens in all industries, and I'm like, no, it doesn't actually, because nobody's walking into a store and taking everything in the store and walking out with it. That's not happening. Which is what's happening to musicians with recorded music, and I don't think people fully understand what it means to have your music just taken from you for nothing. And yet all these huge companies, are reaping benefits from the exploitation of your local musician. And there's nothing we can do about it, seemingly.
Everything is taken away, right? Like if you don't make the money off your music, recorded music, and then you can't make the money off of touring. And when you do tour, you've got the venues who will take a cut of your merch, which is incredible. I don't know how that's legal, but it's
the merch situation is enough to send you off the rails as well, because a lot of the time they'll take 30% of what you're earning. And by the time your management have taken their cut, by the time your business management, your lawyers, your accountants, your tax you paid your taxes, there's very little left. And then, of course, when you're in a band, that gets split. Whatever is left gets split 4 ways. It's the mathematics of it is really quite astounding. And if I think about it too much, I go absolutely batshit crazy.
Well, I'm really sorry that I took us there.
No, I mean, this is a reality. You're not telling me anything I don't know. I mean, this is my life. This has been my life now since the streaming began. When Napster, I was one of the first artists to, raise the alarm about what Napster was doing, but nobody cared. And now we're in the situation we're in.
Yeah. Well, God love you for continuing to do it against all of this. And I keep bringing you back to Anthology because the 3 albums that you've made in the streaming world are all so important to so many of us. The fact that you keep doing it, and I don't know, I mean, when you get to this point, like, I'm not exactly asking like, when's the next record or anything, but how does it change your all's level of participation, of your excitement when it does come to like, okay, are we going to make another record?
I think we all still feel really excited when we get to make another record, and we're in the process already. We've started our 8th studio record a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, it still feels like such an enormous privilege. I mean, we do this because we love it and because we have to do it. It's like asking a fish to live outside of water. Not to make music for a musician is not a solution. A lot of people say, well, if you don't like it, get out the kitchen. If you don't want to be a musician, then don't be a musician. And it's not that simple. It just doesn't work like that. It's like everybody that is a musician who is serious about being creative, it's all they can do. It's all we're fit for, really. So we don't do it for the love of like anyone other than the love of working, and we still seem to enjoy, for the most part, working together. And whenever a song emerges, it's still really, really fun, really exciting. And I'm constantly saying to the band, like, how do we make a record? I can't remember how we make a record. And then we'll spend an afternoon in the studio. And at the end of the day, I'm like, hey, we've started the record. We've got 1 or 2 songs already. Yay! So, it's such a weird thing, but it's magic.
Yeah. Someone asked me the question the other day, what would I do if I weren't doing this job? And I didn't have an answer for that. For the life of me, I couldn't think of anything. I was like, I'd find another way to do this, I guess. It's all I want to do.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. You're lucky. Not everybody gets that privilege, to be doing the thing that they really love.
Very aware of that one, and counting my blessings too, over a coming up on 25-year career. So
wow, incredible.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm just trying to keep up with you guys. So you can't
right.
stop, so then I can't stop. So
that's right. We're keeping you on your toes.
Yes. Well, so I'm gonna go there then. You're working on the new one. It's probably way too early to be asking this, but what can you tell me? I mean, coming off of where you guys were, and it was just so much fun, and to Men Who Rule the World, and it's crazy psychotic post-punk guitar stuff that was going on all the way through. Do you find that there's a thread from that one, or is this a whole new page?
It's funny. I asked myself this a lot lately because I was so proud of No Gods, No Masters, and I still am, and I knew when we finished it, like, this is really good. We've made something really, really good, and arguably we got some of the best reviews of our career, which, despite my confidence, was also really shocking, and to follow that record up is a bit of a conundrum in a way. I don't think so much, musically, I know that we never run out of ideas musically. We're always sort of, we get into the studio together and we jam, and then melodies come out and lyrics, bits of scraps of lyrics come out at the same time. But lyrically, the last record was so specific, but also a sort of an anomaly for us, or for me, it was an anomaly for me. They're not the kind of lyrics that I have traditionally written. So I myself, I'm like, well, where do I go from here? Like, everything hung together so beautifully on that last record. I don't know what's going to happen now. I have a feeling in my gut of things that I want to talk about. That I'm like, every time I do a record, I'm like, what is it you want to say? These are things you want to get off your chest before you die. That's how I always look at it. It's like, that's the best way to guide you, so that you're talking about urgent things that matter, things that really express something that has remained unexpressed throughout your life. To get that out, to get to that core, is so thrilling. When you're like, oh my God, like I've really touched on something here that I've wanted to get off my chest for so long. That's a triumph right there. So who knows whether I'll be able to reach it or not. But I shall be trying, I can assure you.
I thought, it was, to me, and even looking back at your catalog, it was so interesting because, I use that phrase, if it was a completely different page, and No Gods was such a different page in the same way that like Beautiful Garbage was such a different page following those first two records, and the way No Gods followed your next first two records after, coming up from the hiatus. I'm like, look how, it's just the funny way that time works and the way we, contextualize things in our musical boxes or whatever. But that, once again, it's like, here it is. Here's the blank slate. Yeah. Where does it go?
I feel like we've done that though with every record we've done. I mean, you mentioned Strange Little Birds. That is so unlike any of our other records. Version 2.0, unlike anything ever we've done before or since. I feel like that to me is one of the greatest things we've managed as a band, is like not to create a record that sounds like the other record. Instead, it's like you say, a whole new landscape. And I think that's difficult to do. And it's certainly something we try to do when we step out. We don't want to repeat ourselves. What's the point of that? Life is so short. You've only got a minute, to try everything. It's like being in a playground of like, which rides am I going to go on? I need to get them all the really great ones. It's a bit like that. It feels a bit like that,
Yeah. Well, I'm on for the ride. I'm always on for the ride. Is there going to be another season of the podcast? Are you doing that anymore at this point?
I don't know what happened. Like, the company that signed me got sold. And then my contract expired. And then, so the company, the big company, I don't even know if they knew who I was. It just all sort of fell by the wayside, and that's that. So yeah, I was sort of bummed. But then I don't know. I was also like, well, it's because you're not that good. I got really down on myself. It's like the reason that, I mean, I'm not looking for any I'm not looking for compliments or like comfort. I'm just telling you, like, truthfully, I was like kind of bummed out. I was like, did I make a fool of myself? It's like these weird things that you think, like, did I fail? Like on my last season, I got to talk to some of my musical heroes, and I got really self-conscious about that. Like it worked a number on me, I'm going to confess. But life, that's life. And, I got to do it. I got to talk to unbelievable artists. All of them taught me something. And I think I told you this when you and I spoke last. I learned something from each and every one of them, and they all helped. Like, they fired me up in every way. And I'm so grateful to each and every one of them.
Well, I can say in the weird circular things that can happen around here, I would listen to it, not just for the entertainment, because I did, and for the education, because I did, but also I would listen to how you ask questions and then use that in my own, interviews.
You told me this. I remember you saying that. That's so sweet.
But it's true. Like it's a fantastic series, and you're so good at it, and I do get so much out of it. So if there is a future for it, it's all
over now, baby blue.
It ain't happening at the moment anyway. That's what we're saying. It's all right. That's okay. Just keep giving new music, and we'll be happy one way or the other. So it's that's all it goes down to.
Well, I mean, exactly. I mean, I've done a lot of things in my career. I did a TV show for a couple of years, and it was really stressful. I found it really stressful. I found doing the podcast really stressful. And I realized that music is the thing that I do not find stressful at all. Like, I feel always, oh, I'm good at this, and I really love it, and I get a lot of joy from it. And when I walk on stage, I'm not nervous or stressed out or worried at all. So I'm like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life, clearly, because everything else I do, I get really worried. You know what I mean? If I have to talk in public, I get freaked out and sweaty and upset. And like I said with the podcast, I was so hard on myself about it. And then doing the TV show, I was just so freaked out the whole time I did that show, because it's really stressful being an actor. Oh my God. Woo.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I full respect to all these actors. It's like not an easy task at all.
And they all want to be rock stars too, and it's
yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
There's a reason for that, because it's the best job in the world.
Well, it is great, but you have to be of a certain mindset. Like, it's not meant for everybody. It's, you know, it's easy to someone like me, or like Karen O from the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, and I have talked about this before. It's like, it's easy for people like us because we were bred to do it in a way, you know. But I see a lot of people struggle with it, you know, and they get sick and they get upset and they're quitting social media, and then they're back on social media, and then they're off it again, and canceling shows, and, you know, having mental health breakdowns. And I'm just like, baby, you shouldn't be doing this. This is not for you. This is clearly, you could be doing something that makes you feel more joyful.
Again, I'll say thank goodness that you all have stuck with it, because Shirley, Garbage has given me so much joy in my life, and the anthology is just one more grand testament to that.
Hurrah! Huzzah! Thank you so much. That makes me so happy.
Right on. Well, thanks. I'll let you go, but Shirley, it's always so much fun. Thank you for doing this.
All right, my friend. Take care. Cheers. Bye.
And my thanks to Shirley Manson, as always. You can, of course, head anywhere further in this Kyle Meredith with podcast series. She and I have talked many times if you want to dig into some deeper conversations that we've had. So thanks to Shirley. Thanks to you as well for checking out the episode. Do hit that subscribe button before you get out of here again, so you can keep up with all the interviews that we put out every single week, new and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, at iTunes and Apple Podcasts, at Spotify and Podchaser, at NPR, WFPK.org, YouTube for the video version, or again, anywhere you get your podcasts from, subscribe to Kyle Meredith with. Then after that, head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, an hour full of song premieres and music news, anniversary spins, bonus interviews. Again, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern at WFPK.org. Consequence has your music and film news. You can find me on the social media spots as well. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all three of them. The address is at Kyle Meredith. So I do hope you like and follow along. And that does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time. Consequence Podcast Network.
Well, life is long, as they say. There's plenty of time.
It's easy to hear your favorite artist on WFPK from wherever you are. Listen on your smart speaker, live stream from our website at WFPK.org, from Louisville Public Media.